She's yelling, crying, throwing accusations like grenades. Her voice trembles, her hands move sharply, her emotions overflow. Yet your heart rate stays steady. Your voice is even, your face unreadable. And that's the moment she loses control completely. Why aren't you reacting? Don't you care? Say something. But you stay calm, and her frustration grows. What's really happening here isn't just an argument, it's a psychological exchange of power. And once you understand it, you'll never lose your composure again. Because the day a man realizes that calmness is strength, not weakness, is the day he becomes unshakable. This isn't about becoming emotionless or robotic, it's about self-mastery, the ability to feel the storm without being consumed by it. When chaos swirls around you but your center holds steady, you become the lighthouse in her emotional hurricane. That isn't passivity, it's power. The difference between being reactive and being intentional, between being controlled and being in control. I once worked with a man whose girlfriend would start fights every Friday night without fail. He used to argue, defend, apologize until he learnt emotional composure. One evening, she began her usual routine, raising her voice over nothing. He simply looked at her and said calmly, "When you're ready to talk without yelling, I'll be in the living room." Then he walked away. She followed him, screaming louder. He sat down and opened a book. She completely unraveled. Why? Because her emotional triggers stopped working. The remote she had always used to control the emotional atmosphere suddenly had dead batteries. For years she had learned which buttons made him react. Tears brought comfort, anger brought apologies, silence brought pursuit. Each behavior was a test to confirm influence, and when those triggers stopped working, she panicked. Her subconscious strategy for connection had failed. Understand this, provocation as control is almost never deliberate. She's not consciously thinking, "I'll start a fight to test him," but emotionally that's exactly what's happening. These blow-ups are temperature checks, ways to test the relationship hierarchy. Can she still make you react? Can she still pull your strings? When you don't perform as expected, it triggers deep uncertainty. One man I counseled experienced this in his marriage. His wife used to pick small fights until he exploded, and then she'd play the victim. One night, too tired from work to care, he simply stopped reacting. She mentioned his job, his mother, his friends, trying every angle, but he just nodded, saying softly, "Okay, I hear you." She began shaking with frustration. The emotional control she relied on for years suddenly failed. This is the psychology of emotional power. Many people, women and men alike, feel secure when they can influence their partner's emotions. If I can make you angry, I matter. If I can make you chase, I'm valued. If I can make you apologize, I'm right. Your emotional reactions become proof of your care. Remove those reactions and their sense of control disappears. But this isn't cruelty, it's learned behavior. From childhood, many women discover that emotion equals effectiveness. Tears get dad's attention. Distress gets comfort from teachers. Drama gets responses from boyfriends. It becomes an unconscious tool for navigating relationships. Then one day, they meet a man who doesn't respond to that tool, and it feels like the ground disappears. Emotional independence changes everything. When you separate your inner world from someone else's emotions, you create true psychological freedom. Her chaos doesn't define your peace. Her anger doesn't dictate your mood. Her storm doesn't sink your ship. That inner stability is leadership. It communicates maturity without a single word. I learned this the hard way. An ex-girlfriend would collapse into tears, threaten to leave, throw insults every time I'd get pulled in trying to fix her pain. Until one day I didn't. I stayed calm, present but unmoved. After 20 minutes of escalating emotion, she suddenly stopped. "Why aren't you upset?" she asked. I looked at her and said, "Because your emotions belong to you." The relationship changed that day. Conflict containment is an act of discipline. When she throws 10 issues at once, you address one. When she goes personal, you stay on topic. When she tries to drag old arguments into new ones, you keep focus. This isn't stonewalling, it's boundaries. You're showing that emotional chaos doesn't earn your attention, but calm communication does. And here's the paradox. The same calmness that frustrates her consciously also awakens attraction subconsciously. She might hate that she can't control you, but she respects that you can't be controlled. It's a form of quiet dominance, steady, firm, unshakable. Watch what happens after those encounters. She might slam doors, cry, go silent, but later she returns softer, more respectful, sometimes even more drawn to you. Why? Because she's realized you're not emotionally reactive, you're emotionally grounded, you're the frame and she's responding to it at a primal level. Emotional control isn't repression, it's direction. And when a man learns this discipline, his presence becomes the calm in every storm. Most men don't realize that emotional contagion is one of the biggest silent killers in relationships. You absorb her emotions like a sponge. She's anxious, so you become anxious. She's angry, so you grow defensive. She's sad, and you scramble to fix it. But what actually happens is that both of you spiral deeper into the same chaos. The energy you give feeds the emotional fire, and suddenly you're trapped in a feedback loop of tension and guilt. True composure breaks that cycle. It's not about ignoring emotion, but about witnessing it without absorbing it. One of my clients described it perfectly. I imagine her emotions like weather. I can see the storm, acknowledge the storm, even take shelter from it, but I don't become the storm. That mental shift changed his entire marriage. His wife still had her moments, but they passed faster because he stopped feeding them energy. Breaking the emotional pattern resets everything. When she expects guilt after crying and you simply offer calm presence, she's forced to confront the feeling itself. When she expects anger and you respond with curiosity, she loses the old map. When she expects pursuit after pulling away and you respect the space, she learns that manipulation no longer earns connection. Every time you break a pattern, you train both of you toward emotional maturity. I've seen relationships transform through this discipline. One couple, married 15 years, fought almost daily. The husband finally learned emotional composure. In their next argument, she yelled, accused, insulted, but he remained calm. She escalated harder, then suddenly broke down crying. "I don't even know how to fight with you anymore," she said. That moment of surrender opened the door to real communication for the first time in years. That's what composure truly is, self-possession. It's not about dominating her, it's about mastering yourself. When you own your time, your emotions, and your focus, you create natural leadership, not by force but through stability. This is what frame control really means. You set the emotional tone, not through manipulation but through steadiness. The frame is your energy, your rhythm, your boundaries. And the truth is, female emotional testing never stops, it simply evolves. These emotional surges are subconscious ways of checking your steadiness. Can you stay grounded under pressure? Can you keep your cool when pushed to the edge? Remaining calm under those conditions doesn't just maintain attraction, it builds trust. She realizes she can have her emotional moments without destroying the relationship. One client told me his girlfriend admitted, "Sometimes I start fights just to see if you're still strong. When you don't react, I hate it at first, but afterward I feel safe." That's the paradox of masculine calm. It frustrates the surface but heals the core. Her conscious mind might resist it, but her unconscious craves it, because emotional stability equals safety, and safety equals love. The mature dynamic in any relationship isn't control, it's mutual autonomy. Both partners regulate their own emotions without demanding the other to carry the weight. This doesn't mean cold disconnection, it means deliberate connection. You choose to engage, not because you're provoked, but because you decide it's worth engaging. At first, your composure will drive some women crazy. They'll mistake your calm for indifference, your silence for distance. But as time passes, that same calm becomes what they value most. They'll say to friends, "He's so steady, nothing rattles him, he's my rock." The quality they once fought against becomes the very thing that makes them feel secure. Emotional leadership through stillness is what most women deeply want, despite what they might say. By holding steady, you regulate the shared emotional environment. Instead of two people feeding chaos, one person holds center while the other processes their emotions safely. I saw this in my own parents. My mother would get worked up, emotional, sometimes irrational. My father rarely raised his voice. She would escalate. He would stay grounded. Eventually, her tone matched his, not the other way around. They've been married for over 40 years. One day my mother told me, "Your father's calmness saved our marriage hundreds of times." That's when I realized emotional regulation is contagious. Just as anxiety spreads, so does calm. Men often believe being a good partner means mirroring her emotions, feeling what she feels, suffering when she suffers. But that's not empathy, it's codependency. You can't be her emotional equalizer if you lose yourself in her storm. No woman respects a man who becomes her echo. She may feel powerful for a moment, but she'll lose attraction over time. This has a biological foundation. When you remain calm during her emotional outburst, your nervous system begins to influence hers. It's called co-regulation. Your steady breathing, relaxed tone, and controlled heartbeat send a physiological signal that there is no threat. Her body starts to follow yours. Her breathing slows, her voice softens, her brain chemistry literally changes. One couple I worked with showed this perfectly. The wife had panic attacks about money, convinced they'd lose everything. Her husband sat beside her, took slow breaths, and started calmly writing out their expenses on paper. Within minutes, her breathing slowed to match his. She went from hysteria to clarity, without him saying a single word about her emotions. His calm became her medicine. That's the power of masculine composure. It's not loud, it's not flashy. It's simply presence, so steady that chaos cannot survive near it. Attachment styles explain a lot about why emotional composure can trigger such strong reactions. People with anxious attachment often need constant emotional feedback to feel safe. If you don't react, they interpret it as rejection. He's not responding, so he must not care. But here's the paradox. Your consistent calmness is actually the medicine that heals that anxiety. When you remain grounded and steady, even when she's spiraling, her nervous system begins to trust something it's never known: stability that doesn't abandon or explode. Over time, that consistency rewires the brain. A client once told me my wife had deep abandonment trauma from childhood. Every time she got emotional, she expected me to match her intensity. When I learned to stay calm and still tell her, "I'm here, I care, I'm not going anywhere," something shifted. Months later, she said she finally felt safe in her own skin. This is what emotional stability really gives a relationship: safety without surrender. It doesn't mean you disconnect or ignore feelings. It means you create a secure container where both people can exist without fear of destruction. But calmness goes against everything society teaches us about love. Movies, music, books all glorify emotional chaos. The fights, the tears, the makeups. Passion is painted as pain, and love is mistaken for intensity. So when a man brings peace instead of drama, it can feel foreign. She might consciously say she wants calmness, but subconsciously, she equates chaos with connection. That's why early on, your composure may feel like rejection to her. But as she adjusts, she starts to crave the peace, because peace is addictive once you've lived through chaos. Now, calmness doesn't mean being detached or cold. There are moments when matching her emotional state briefly before guiding it back down can be powerful. It's like emotional Aikido. You redirect energy instead of resisting it. When she's genuinely joyful, match that happiness. When she's grieving, meet her in that space. But then gently, you return to baseline, and she follows. You're showing empathy without losing your frame. I practice this with my current partner. When she's truly hurt, I don't go stoic. I look her in the eye and say, "I can see that really hurt you." Then I soften my tone and say, "Let's figure out what happened." That combination, emotional acknowledgement followed by calm problem solving, is incredibly powerful. It validates her without surrendering control. The key is knowing the difference between authentic emotion and emotional manipulation. One deserves compassion, the other requires boundaries. True empathy doesn't mean letting someone drown you just because they're sinking. You can care deeply without becoming consumed. And when you master this balance, everything changes. Long-term, couples who build this kind of emotional composure report dramatically higher satisfaction. The first few years may feel less exciting, but after year 5, the bond deepens into something unbreakable. It's the difference between a wildfire that burns hot and fast and coals that glow steadily for decades. One woman told me after 15 years of marriage, "I used to think his calmness meant he didn't care. Now I realize it's what allowed me to finally face my own emotions safely. He didn't fight my storms, he absorbed them until they passed. He became my safe space." That's the hidden power of calm men. They create safety by existing. It's important, though, to recognize that calmness can trigger old wounds. Women who grew up in chaotic households often associate emotional intensity with love. So when they meet a man who doesn't play the same game, it creates panic. Their subconscious says, "If I can't make him react, I don't matter." Understanding this helps you stay compassionate while maintaining your boundaries. You're not dealing with malice, you're dealing with conditioning. Her childhood trained her to seek connection through emotional intensity. You're teaching her that connection can exist through peace. But make no mistake, being the emotional anchor is hard work. It's a burden most men aren't prepared for. Holding space for another person's chaos while managing your own emotions is advanced psychological labor. It requires inner strength, patience, and sometimes loneliness. A divorced man once told me, "I spent 15 years being her emotional stability. When I finally broke down, she said I was emotionally unavailable. I gave until I had nothing left, and then she left me for being empty." That's why emotional composure must be paired with self-care and boundaries. You can't pour from an empty cup. Calmness should come from fullness, not fatigue. Meditation, rest, solitude, these aren't luxuries, they're maintenance. Because when you run out of emotional energy, calmness turns into numbness, and numbness kills relationships just as fast as volatility does. The truth is, composure filters people. The women who need chaos to feel alive will leave. The women ready for peace will stay. Your calmness becomes a mirror that reflects their emotional maturity. It attracts those capable of deep love and repels those addicted to drama. And here's the irony. Your peace might make some people walk away, but the ones who stay will finally meet you in the calm. Physiologically, this has massive benefits. Men who master composure show lower cortisol, better heart health, and stronger immune systems. You're not just protecting your relationship, you're literally extending your life. So yes, staying calm might save your marriage, but it could also save you. When a man learns to regulate his emotions, he doesn't just stabilize his relationship, he changes the emotional climate for everyone around him. Children, colleagues, even friends begin to mirror that steadiness, because emotional energy is contagious. I worked with a client who had 2 young sons. He told me, "Whenever my wife started yelling, I used to yell too. The house became a war zone." But when he began practicing composure, everything shifted. His sons started copying him instead of their mother. They learned that calmness was strength. One day, his teenager said, "Dad, the way you stay calm when mum's upset taught me what being a man means. That's generational healing. Your emotional control becomes a model for others. It shows what self-mastery looks like, not through lectures but through presence." Children who grow up around emotional steadiness become adults who don't fear intensity because they've learned that emotions can be handled without destruction. This dynamic even appears in spirituality. Every major tradition, Buddhism, Stoicism, Christianity, Islam, teaches the same truth. Composure is divine. Emotional balance isn't weakness, it's enlightenment. The ability to remain steady when everything falls apart is the essence of spiritual maturity. But before calmness becomes your nature, you'll face what I call the recalibration period. It's the stage where your new discipline threatens the old system. Expect 2 to 6 months of intensified emotional testing. She'll push harder, scream louder, accuse more viciously, not because she's evil, but because her subconscious is trying to confirm that your calm is real. It's called an extinction burst, the last desperate effort of an old pattern fighting for survival. I've seen this countless times. One man told me, "After I stopped reacting, my wife went nuclear. She said I didn't care, she threw things, she even threatened divorce. I almost gave in just to stop the chaos." But he didn't. He stayed composed, not cold. 6 months later, she broke down crying and said, "I was trying to break you, to prove you were like everyone else who hurt me. When you didn't break, I finally felt safe." That's the paradox of calmness. It's tested violently before it's trusted completely. But not every story ends perfectly. Some relationships collapse when one partner refuses to grow. That's why emotional composure must be rooted in purpose. You're not staying calm for her approval, you're doing it because your peace is non-negotiable. This level of discipline requires inner work. Meditation, therapy, breath work, journaling, these aren't soft activities. They're the weightlifting of the mind. The gym builds muscle. Inner work builds emotional armor. Each time you sit with discomfort instead of reacting, you're rewiring your nervous system. You're training yourself for psychological combat, and the results are measurable. Studies show that women's respect for their partners correlates not with dominance or money, but with emotional stability. Not emotional absence, stability. A man who can feel deeply yet respond thoughtfully commands respect naturally. The sexual dynamic this creates is rarely discussed but incredibly real. When a woman feels she can't emotionally destabilize you, she feels safe, and paradoxically that safety turns into desire. The same composure that frustrates her in conflict awakens something primal. I've heard this from countless couples. One woman said, "When he stays calm during my storms, I feel both angry and turned on. It's confusing, but I can't deny it." Her primitive brain reads composure as dominance, strength, and reliability, qualities evolution coded as attractive. Emotional steadiness becomes a kind of masculine magnetism. In long-term relationships, this dynamic deepens physical intimacy. When she knows you won't crumble or retaliate under pressure, she relaxes, trusts more, and opens up in every sense of the word. The energy shifts from tension to polarity. She can fully express her femininity because your masculine frame holds firm. Even outside the home, this composure commands respect. When she becomes emotional in public and you remain calm, you demonstrate social leadership. You're signaling that your emotions are not dictated by embarrassment or peer pressure. She may not show it immediately, but she registers it. A man who stays calm under social chaos is a man others instinctively trust. It's also important to understand emotional energy as fuel. Drama burns energy fast. Every argument, every reactive outburst consumes life force. When you refuse to feed the fire, it dies. Your calmness is the wet blanket that smothers dysfunction. Without fuel, chaos can't survive. The practical effect is astonishing. Fights shorten dramatically. What once lasted 3 days becomes 3 hours. The emotional recovery that used to take weeks now takes minutes. Over years, that translates to thousands of hours not wasted in emotional warfare. When you're calm, you also start seeing projection clearly. Instead of drowning in accusations, you begin to recognize which emotions are truly yours and which belong to her. You become a mirror reflecting her internal state, helping her confront her own wounds. That clarity can only exist when you're not reactive. This pattern has deep evolutionary roots. Throughout history, men who stayed calm during crisis were the ones who survived and led. Women who tested for emotional stability found better protectors. It's an ancient dance wired into our DNA. You're not fighting modern gender politics, you're participating in a biological ritual that's existed for millennia. An anthropologist friend once told me, in every culture studied, women test, and men prove steadiness. It's universal. The rituals change, but the psychology doesn't. That's why mastering composure feels so natural once you practice it. It's literally part of your evolutionary design. And with time, it becomes effortless. What begins as conscious effort turns into unconscious mastery. At first, staying calm feels like holding your breath underwater, but eventually calmness becomes your natural state. You stop having to try, you simply are. When that happens, your presence alone diffuses tension. People start lowering their voices around you. Not because you demand respect, but because your energy commands it. You've become the lighthouse, the stable force guiding others through their storms. Once composure becomes your natural state, your entire world recalibrates. Relationships, work, friendships, everything begins to orbit around your stability. Because emotional steadiness doesn't just benefit romance, it transforms every area of life. Couples who master calm communication report staggering results. Studies show up to a 75% drop in fight frequency, an 80% reduction in fight duration, and a 90% improvement in conflict resolution. Satisfaction increases dramatically. Those aren't small gains, they're relationship revolutions. Why? Because you've removed the chaos tax. No more emotional hangovers, no more sleepless nights, no more endless analysis of who said what. You've built a structure where conflict becomes growth, not destruction. The self-respect this builds is priceless. Every time you remain composed in the face of provocation, you prove something to yourself. I'm not controlled by anyone. That's real power, not the kind that dominates others, but the kind that governs self. And that power extends beyond love. The man who can't be emotionally manipulated by his partner also can't be manipulated by a boss, a client, or society itself. Emotional mastery is the foundation of all leadership, but calmness isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. You must recognize when calmness becomes complicity. If she turns violent, that's not testing, it's abuse. If she threatens self-harm to provoke reaction, that's not a cry for attention, it's emotional blackmail. If she involves others to pressure you, that's manipulation. Calmness won't fix toxicity, boundaries and distance will. The truth is, composure must always align with purpose. You're not calm because you're indifferent, you're calm because you have direction. Your life has weight, you have mission, focus, a destination. Emotional storms can't derail you because you're guided by something bigger than validation. A client once told me, when I reconnected with my purpose, my wife's emotional storms became background noise. I still cared, but I stopped letting them steer my ship. She later told him, I finally feel like you're leading us somewhere. That's the paradox. When you stop reacting, you start leading. Your calmness becomes the compass for the relationship. She feels safer, not because you're emotionally passive, but because you're emotionally predictable. Predictability is security. She knows you won't vanish or explode when things get hard. You've become the container that allows her to feel freely without destroying the structure that holds you both. Every time you stay calm during conflict, you're making an investment in future peace. You're teaching her subconscious that drama no longer pays dividends. Over time, her brain literally rewires. Emotional expression stops being a weapon and becomes communication again. That's why calmness must never be confused with apathy. You can care deeply while staying composed. Childhood logic says, if someone doesn't panic with me, they don't care. Adult logic understands that true care is calm, measured, and reliable. Think of a surgeon in an emergency room. The patient is bleeding, alarms are blaring, chaos everywhere. The surgeon doesn't scream or match the panic. He breathes, focuses, acts. That's not coldness, it's compassion under control. Now imagine applying that mindset to your life. At work, in crisis, in family arguments, you become the one who never loses the thread. That's leadership. Men who master emotional composure at home often see huge gains professionally. Stressful meetings become manageable, negotiations flow smoother, conflict resolution becomes natural. Why? Because emotional dynamics are universal. The same skill that diffuses a fight with your partner helps you manage chaos in a boardroom. And as you grow calmer, everyone around you adjusts upward. Partners, children, colleagues, they all begin to rise to your emotional standard. You stop preaching and start leading by being. When you remove emotional reactivity from your life, you remove manipulation from your relationships. No one can bait you into a fight, guilt you into submission, or charm you into chaos. You become the gravity that others must orbit responsibly. This is why calmness changes more than relationships. It transforms lineages. When you break patterns of shouting, blaming, and emotional volatility, you heal generations of dysfunction. Your father's anger ends with you. Your grandfather's silence ends with you. Your children inherit peace instead of chaos. That's legacy. The neuroscience behind all this proves what ancient wisdom already knew. Stability is strength. Your calmness literally rewires the emotional environment. When your partner rages and you stay grounded, her nervous system recalibrates to yours. She learns safety through you. You're not extinguishing her fire, you're giving it shape and warmth. That's the essence of masculine presence. It's the emotional architecture of the relationship. Your boundaries form the walls, your steadiness forms the foundation. Within those walls, she can cry, laugh, rage, love, and still feel safe. Without them, everything collapses. And that's why emotional leadership is sacred work. You're not suppressing emotion, you're shaping it. You're creating the home both of you can live in. With time, you'll notice a shift. Arguments that once terrified you now feel like opportunities. Emotional chaos that once drained you now passes through you. Calm becomes not just your reaction, it becomes your identity. And that identity attracts a different kind of woman, a different kind of life. Because calm men don't live in drama, they build empires on stability. In the end, composure isn't about control, it's about evolution. It's the transition from external validation to internal strength, from emotional chaos to grounded purpose. Your calmness forces everyone around you to evolve or to leave. Either way, your peace remains. So I'll ask you this: when did you first realize the power of staying calm? What changed when you stopped taking the emotional bait? How did your world shift when you refused to let chaos dictate your state? Share your story, because this movement, this revolution of emotional sovereignty, begins one man at a time. Your calmness isn't coldness, it's strength. And in a world addicted to drama, that strength isn't just rare, it's revolutionary.